Thank you for coming this morning and for being here on time. Welcome to one more session of the Climate Change Africa Summit 2021. I am Romain Posé, Program Director of Climate Change. Thank you for being here. Today is the last virtual day of this summit. We have a lot of interesting parallel sessions, and thank you for being here with us today. So we're talking today about mobility and transport. We've been looking at it for quite a while with our partners that are here today, especially ICLE Africa, CETUD, Codatud, and SLOCAT. We'll be able to hear from them later. So what is the goal of today's workshop? We'd like to give you the latest news about this coalition for mobility and transport. We'll look at what the members are doing. We're going to see some project examples that we've chosen today. And finally, we'll see how we're moving forward on the sustainable mobility roadmap in Africa. We've been putting it into play. We've been working on it. We've been rolling it out in Africa, working on sustainable mobility that PPMC has put together on a global level. Morocco has put it in place, Ivory Coast, and Senegal is starting on really rolling this program out. We'll look at that at the last part of this workshop. So I'm not going to really go into too much introduction. So I'd like to give the floor to Benla Soulage, who is the General Secretary of Climate Change. And he will be the moderator of this workshop. Good morning, everyone. I'm very happy to see you here again. Maybe we crossed paths yesterday virtually. Maybe we were able to meet up already in CLUC or transportation meetings. So unfortunately today we still have to do this virtually. As Romain said, we're going to try to be very to the point because we have time restraints. And we'd like to see what all of you are doing. So we're going to start with someone that I know for a long time. We've known each other for a long time. We worked on climate and transportation. So I'm very happy that he's here. And this shows us how we can really work together concerning transportation and transport. So you don't have a timer in front of you, but after 5 or 6, 7 maximum minutes, I will come back on the screen as like the genie out of the bottle. And I will tell you that your time is coming close to an end. So please try to understand this non-subliminal message. And when you see my face, that means that you have to stop. So please try to respect these time limits so we can have interesting exchanges following the speeches. Of course, you can't raise your hand, but please send us questions or comments by chat. And then we'll be able to really discuss amongst ourselves. So I would like to give you the floor to Marusa at SLOCAT. Thank you very much. I'm going to try to talk in both, considering the fact that I did my PowerPoint in English. So firstly, thank you, Bernard and Romain. It's true that our career paths always change or cross over time. It's very strange. So congratulations for continuing to work in this under these difficult circumstances that we have today. So it's a great honor for SLOCAT to be here with the partners. We are so lucky to welcome you in an official level, all of you here at Climate Change Summit. So I'm very happy to be able to speak with you here today. I have a small PowerPoint that I'd like to go into. Maybe, do you want me to share it from my screen, or would you, will you share it? I have it here, so I've started the PowerPoint. I think it should go on here. So thank you very much. So I'm going to start in English to tell you who we are.
SLOCAT is the international multi-stakeholder partnership that powers the sustainable low-carbon transport revolution with ambition, solutions, and collaboration. Our mission is very much to enable knowledge towards action, and also to bring the voice of the movement into the intergovernmental processes on climate and sustainability. We want to do that with a primary focus on land transport, but across all modes. That means that we look into buses, into trains, and also into walking and into cycling. And we have an absolute commitment to focus our global footprint towards the global south. Let me tell you a bit more about who is that partnership. When I tell you that we are a multi-stakeholder partnership, who are we? And I'm really trying to click on the next slide, but for some reason, I don't think it's happening. So let me see if I manage it. There you go. I think that now it should be showing. So this is our SLOCAT family. This is what Climate Change is now integrating officially. As you can see, it's a composition of multilateral organizations, of non-governmental organizations, of academia, of private sector, and also of governmental support. This is the family who we are. And therefore, it gives us this multitude of voices, but we also gather a large community of change makers. And all together, we try to go there where going individually might be a bit difficult. And how do we do this? We do it in 3 types of actions. We do knowledge analysis, and I would invite you all to have a look at our 2nd edition of the Global Status Report on Transport and Climate Change, which contains a section on Africa in particular. And we can be sending the link on the chat box very soon after I stop talking to you. And we also look into advocacy initiatives of all kinds with different partners, also beyond the transport sector, going into the energy families, the urban development families, and the renewable energies families, for instance. And we also dedicate a lot of our capacity to networking, to building partnerships, and to giving birth to different ideas that could help people come together and work together. So the beauty of seeing Climate Change and SLOCAT coming officially together is that it's really going to allow us to share these common goals and this common vision for the implementation of Paris. SLOCAT is the officially appointed focal point, jointly with the International Transport Forum of the OECD, for engaging the transport sector in UNFCCC. And as we were saying, we are long-term partners. Climate Change has been carrying out a terrific effort in implementing the global macro roadmap of the Paris Process on Mobility and Climate into specific countries in Africa, as we heard, Côte d'Ivoire, Morocco, and Senegal. The Paris Process on Mobility and Climate Change was an idea of the Moving On ecosystem by Michelin and SLOCAT to bring together actors from the private and the public sector. And we have a great outlook ahead of us in 2022, because we are planning on collaborating in the Dakar Week for Sustainable Mobility, in the African Climate Week of the UNFCCC, and obviously in the COP27, which we are very much looking forward to because it will be hosted by an African nation. So plenty of collaboration ahead. Je vais passer à nouveau au français, juste pour vous dire à quel point je suis
So I'm very happy to, very happy to have been able to really roll out these partnerships and to work with good colleagues and to work with this great organization, Climate Chance, which is doing a great job, and with the various partner organizations. And I thank everyone for having been here. And also I'm going to listen with great contentment for the next sessions or the next speeches. So I'd like to ask a question right away. What are you doing in Glasgow? So it'd be interesting for you to know. I'll put in the chat box a link in which we can see what we're doing. Let's not forget that on the 10th of November 2021, it's a day that is dedicated to transport. We're going to do a lot of things on that day. We'll talk about the traditional partnership events in Marrakesh. And we will also have a very special workshop concerning transportation. We are involved in the various pavilions. We'll be there in the health pavilion, and we'll be in the energy pavilion, which is a pavilion for sustainable energy for all. All of the various foundations, for example, IKEA Foundation will be there. We'll be in the French, Benelux, and German pavilions. So we will be present at all of these side events. So we're going to, at this day that I spoke about, the 10th of November 2021, will be one day dedicated to transport. But we also have a ministerial side that we try to organize with the ITF. So we can come together with the transportation and environment ministries. I won't be able to confirm this, but I can confirm it in the near future. Maybe where the Slow Cat family will go, who will be involved with, if we're going to do it in a hybrid online way, so that we can capture the voices of the people who will not be able to come to Glasgow because of the situation. So this has been a small overview, but when I share the link, you'll be able to see what we will be doing. So it will be put up on the side chat. I will go to Glasgow also in the second week, and I hope we'll be able to meet up. So thank you very much. Thank you very much for all of these elements of information. So thank you very much. So I'd like to give the floor to Mr. Biku. Sorry, not Mr. It's Ms. Sometimes I have difficulties with first names.
Thanks.
She's going to present Africa Mobility Month. So it's for you. You've got 7 minutes to use.
Thanks so much. I think I'll use probably less than 7 minutes, but good morning, everybody. I'm very happy to be here with you today on this glorious Friday morning. I'm Jahan Biku. I'm a professional officer in the Urban Systems Unit at ICLEI Africa. For those who don't know, just a little bit about ICLEI. ICLEI is a global network organization of around 2,500 local and subnational governments who are committed to sustainable urban development. And at ICLEI Africa, we provide regional support as well as local government support to more than 120 governments, local and regional governments, and help them to develop sustainability policies and to really drive local action for low carbon emissions, nature-based, equitable, resilient, and circular development. And through ICLEI Africa's advocacy work, we aim to build momentum with our cities to mainstream sustainable development for systemic change. So today is a very exciting day, and we are delighted to be launching the third African Mobility Month campaign. And so the African Mobility Month was initiated in 2019 and is convened annually by ICLEI Africa and many of our wonderful partners working across the region. So African Mobility Month, the campaign really advocates for improved mobility in African cities and really challenges a fundamental shift in the way we think of mobility for people and the way we design mobility systems for our rapidly growing cities. and really challenging and moving away from, traditional mobility planning and the often car-centric development paradigms that are currently existing, which, as we've seen, is not only contributing to growing carbon emissions and other pollutants, but also drives inequality and injustices in our cities. So as it stands in African cities, many people often spend hours traveling to get to their places of employment. And this is really taking away valuable time from people's everyday lives. Cost of transportation and cost of commuting is really impacting the most vulnerable and the urban poor disproportionately. And we still have many challenges with road safety, for example, and with walkers and cyclists, which form the majority of road users in African cities, often being the most vulnerable due to poor infrastructure. And so thinking of these things, we can and we must change this. And so with this campaign, we really aim to build momentum around shifting towards more socially just mobility systems that enhance the everyday lives of urban citizens, that caters to people's differentiated needs, offers access to opportunities and the city's amenities and services, is affordable, is safe, and really prioritizes and integrates low emission and sustainable mobility, such as walking and cycling and public transport. And so during this month, we invite you all to join us for this journey and really support this collective movement and participate in African Mobility Month, where we're really focusing this year on transforming mobility in African cities. This campaign is vital to building momentum around just urban mobility transitions for achieving the Sustainable Development Goals and the Paris Agreement commitments, and really calls on everyone to push for and take ambitious action as we go forward. So from the 17th of September to the 17th of October, we invite you to share resources, to share your knowledge, to engage in discussions and conversation around mobility in our cities and how we can transform it. We invite you to participate in some of our events, which are located on our website, which I will share with you, the link, as well as to host your own events, whether it's online or in person, and really, through community bike rides, through car-free days, bike sharing schemes, host these events, take pictures, share them on social media, and sharing this campaign, and really, help to strengthen and connect networks and partnerships through this. We'd like to see initiatives on the ground. We'd like to see projects that are really aiming to transform mobility in our cities, and really inspire others to take action too. So we ask you to share this with us on social media using the hashtag African Mobility Month. And we really look forward to seeing and engaging with your content, your stories, and your images. So I will leave you with that. I'm going to also leave you with a brochure on how to get involved, as well as the link to the African Mobility Month webpage, where you'll find all the information. And I really look forward to this. Thanks.
Merci beaucoup. Merci beaucoup. Et Jeanne, toujours dans la même ligne de l'activité en matière de transport en Afrique, je passe maintenant la parole à Charlène Kouassi, qui est la responsable de l'Observatoire des mobilités africaines, qui a été lancé avec le soutien de la Fondation Michelin et qui développe, comme son nom l'indique, une observation de ce qui se fait et qui va nous dire un peu à la fois ce qu'elle fait et puis sa vision du développement des transports, et notamment du transport public ou du transport alternatif en Afrique. Donc Charlène, vous avez la parole et heureux de vous retrouver puisqu'on vous a déjà vu hier, je crois.
Oui,
voilà.
Effectivement, bonjour à tous. Oui, c'est toujours un plaisir d'être associé aux événements de Climate Change. Donc, c'est vrai que historiquement, l'Observatoire des mobilités africaines a été créé en 2017 par le département de la prospective Michelin. Vous m'entendez?
Très bien, pas de problème. Pas de problème.
Ah, ok, super.
C'est parfait.
Super. Ok, donc par le département de la prospective Michelin. Donc, tout ça dans le but d'apporter finalement une perspective africaine en mobilité, en tout cas au sein du groupe Michelin, avoir finalement une meilleure visibilité sur les tendances et les différents types d'acteurs et de projets qui sont à l'œuvre en Afrique. Et peu à peu, nous avons migré jusqu'à aujourd'hui vers un écosystème, en tout cas la co-construction d'un écosystème qui va permettre finalement d'arriver à un laboratoire d'innovation, donc un lab, mais en Afrique. Et cette année, pour justement migrer vers cette ambition-là, nous faisons partie de l'écosystème Moving On, donc de manière effective. Donc un écosystème effectivement dont la jeune dame de Slowcat, j'ai oublié son nom, a parlé. Donc l'un des plus gros écosystèmes de la mobilité durable dans le monde. Et le but, c'est vraiment à l'image du Moving On Lab qu'on peut trouver en Europe ou encore en Amérique du Nord et bientôt en Asie, c'est d'avoir un écosystème d'acteurs qui soit...
So we need to have an actor ecosystem with startups. We have to have an ecosystem which is based upon concrete actions that are happening in Africa. We have workshops, monthly workshops. And we work with various companies, for example, Alliance Afrique, Orange, Total. All of these groups are working with us as stakeholders, and we try to, on a monthly basis, and we have to really foster cooperation and really move forward with this project over the next few years to be able to identify the various projects that are important and which are environmentally responsible, and also that they respect the users. Also, we are really focused on knowledge through articles and various media reports, and also we try to be very centered upon action. And we work not only in Africa, but also on a worldwide basis. So in the Africa Climate Week at the end of this month. And we also work in various local events, which will allow you to have a better holistic view of so that we can really work on the ground, not only in public transport, but also in the artisanal area. We work together with the Abidjan transport authorities. So we really participate in the various policies and actions to work on mobility on an African level. So that's all I've got to say. I don't think that I went over the 7 minutes.
Yes, it's good that we have exchanges. Thank you for keeping it short and to the point. But we'll come back to you for in the question and answer sessions. Thank you, and we'll see you later. Thank you. Now we are going over to Abdirahman Menigui, who is going to speak to us about the urban mobility projects in Ghana, where we were last year. Ghana Urban Mobility and Accessibility Project, where we were last year, sorry. Because last time we were forced by the pandemic to abstain. So Tanya is going to turn your microphone on.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Perfect. That's fine. You can go. Vous pouvez y aller.
All right. Thank you, everyone, and thank you for having me. My name is Abdirahman Menigui, and I work as a GIS project manager with Transport for Cairo. GIS.
Sorry. Could you speak slowly for the translation? Okay. Take care of translators. Thank you.
So I work as a GIS project manager. GIS stands for Geographic Information System. So I basically manage projects that has to do with data collection and analysis in Transport for Cairo. So I want to talk to you about GoMap, our current project in Ghana. But first, let me explain what Transport for Cairo is about. So Transport for Cairo was founded in 2015 with the general aim of improving mobility in the Greater Cairo region in our city. Since then, we've expanded our activities to multiple African cities with similar problems to Cairo. So the main goal of most of our activities now is to shift urban travelers from private cars to public transport, and also from public transport to active travel, such as walking and cycling. We see that distances traveled and the mode choice, the choice of the vehicle, and transport are the two main factors for greenhouse emissions from the transport sectors, for the transport sector. So GoMap, talking about GoMap, the government of Ghana has received like a grant from the Swiss Confederation, and it applied a part of it towards the technical assistance and capacity building for the completion of database management system and maps for the public transport routes and the passenger flows in Ghana, in the greater Accra region. So we've extended what we call our Route Lab technology, which is a software suite to the departments of transport at the Greater Accra. So through GoMap, we've extended this technology to empower African cities to collect and manage their data more efficiently. The idea is to have a software suite that can collect data about paratransit, what we call paratransit, or some call it informal transportation, which is very prevalent in our African cities. In this way, we would have much more informed passenger information systems. So we have people having more incentive to take public transport when they have the info on how to go from X to Y. But more importantly also, it helps the planners create sustainable urban mobility plans, which can transform our complex urban realities in Africa into potentially cleaner and more equitable future scenarios. So eventually, we believe that the skillful producers and consumers of data are essential for the success of a sustainable mobility information system in African cities. This is why our solution to GoMap had to include capacity building. So we're not bringing in a software suite, we're bringing in a full process to enable the participating departments of transport to be able to effectively maintain and utilize the data, as well as a data sustainability strategy that can tackle the important issue of frequently updating and integrating this data after we are long gone. So you have this capacity locally within the government. You have this visibility of the public transportation network in any feasibility plans for the users, the passengers, and so on. We are currently also working on expanding our technology platform to perform greenhouse gas modeling without our intervention as a consultant. So it should be an easy user interface it's like a click and go, and to ultimately help our partners envision and take action towards decarbonization and net zero. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay, merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. I'll come back also later on, Abderrahman, for other issues. Now we are going to give the microphone to Mr. Okito on the solutions, on the Mopay solution by Parfait Okito. And I'm very curious to know what this is about. Mr. Okito, it's your turn. There's a slight sound problem, a major sound problem. Hello, it's not. Maybe you could turn off your camera because you have bandwidth issues. Yeah, it seems to be better now. Go ahead. Hello. So I'm Parfait Okito. I'm the co-founder of Mopay Solutions. It is a company. The ambition is to help Congo to do the environmental transition and enter the sustainable development and meet the sustainable development goals. The aim is to help Congo via innovation. And when we started this adventure, we realized that the first problem there was in Congo in terms of pollution was transport. So we've decided to adapt our first solution in transport. Our first solution is called EcoCar. This is a solution of shared transport on the model of Uber. With some slight differences is that we're also trying to do financial inclusion, and particularly we only use mobile money in order to use our service of car sharing, of drive sharing, really in the model of Uber. There's an app you can actually order a car. The problem is you do not buy it for a transport system, but for this specific route, but because the African model is that now people rent a car for half an hour or for an hour. So we basically did nothing more than digitizing this habit and trying to provide a social specificity of our product. All our cars are electric cars. We have imported a fleet of electric cars. We have 12 of them in the city of Kinshasa, and we provide the solution via an app. And the second solution that was very simple, very natural, and that was really at the heart of our solution, it's the implementation of a network of charging stations. We have about 15 charging stations. There's a 16th will be implemented shortly around the city of Kinshasa, in the heart of the city mainly, which is where every day there's about 1 million cars circulating per day. As you say, in Kinshasa, there's about 15 million people. We think it's about 16 and 17 million people in the city of Kinshasa. So we have decided to provide a network of charging stations that would allow drivers to move from fossil fuel cars to electric cars. Our aim is to implement 100 of these charging stations in order to so that more drivers in Congo and Kinshasa can switch to electric cars. We have a certain number of partners. We have Arabank, which is the biggest major bank in the country. There's a strong CSR vibe, and that has financed the implementation of first 10 charging stations. We also have the major telecom Congolese telecom company that has also sponsored 5 and up to 10 charging stations until the end of the month. And then we also have the Bracondo, the brewery, which is part of the Castel Group. They also have a strong CSR vibe. Then they're also helping us to, and they will also be installing charging stations in their network. We are working at the moment together with the state in order to help them convert part of the presidential fleet into electrical cars, and also on the Jeux de la Francophonie, on the Francophonie Olympics in August 2022. So we think that the official fleet will be 100% electric. That will be provided by Mopay, who is an official sponsor of these Francophonie Olympics. So this is a quick presentation of who we are. We've been existing for the past 10 months. We're less than 1 year old. And so this is the strategies and the projects that we have been implementing. Thank you. Thank you very much. And I'll come back to you later when we're doing the question and answers. Now, I'm going to give the microphone back to Romain because sadly our friend from Aristide from Ivory Coast was Aristide Gaillet, who was supposed to present to us the roadmap for Ivory Coast on sustainable mobility. He's not been able to participate, so Romain will be presenting this aspect. Romain. Thank you, Bernard. Yes, sadly, Aristide Gaillet is not able to join us today. He is the consultant who has allowed us to implement this urban sustainable mobility roadmap together with Climate Chance. The idea being, and some of you know it already, but I'll skip a quick overview. At the global level, it's a platform called PPLST. It's the alliance between SLOCAT that Maruxa has presented early on, and Mobinon. They have decided to work together with the United Nations on the issues of climate change to define the roadmap of the mobility sector for decarbonization of the public transport sector, with various identified subsectors or levers identified in order to decarbonate the sector. What are the margins of action? Various scenarios up all the way up to 2050. This global roadmap is very interesting. It gives us a framework, but what we wanted to do with Climate Chance was to try to replicate it in a national context in order to mobilize the actors and stakeholders of a country in order to mobilize various stakeholders around this roadmap of the PPMC. Ivory Coast has done it too and has finalized. This has been finalized recently. This was an exercise that took some time to implement because the launch was our climate change summit in 2018 in Abidjan, where we did a mobility workshop, somewhat like the one today, but in face-to-face, where we brought together a diversity of people from Ivory Coast, stakeholders, people from local authority, public operators, representatives of the ministries, and so they said we want to structure a roadmap around the PPMC strategy. Let's do it together. And we said, okay. And thanks with the help of the Michelin Foundation, we have been able to work on this since July 2018, together with Aristide, who was supposed to present this work today, but sadly he's not been able to do it. So it's a group of about 60 stakeholders from Ivory Coast, among other Charlène from as part. Maybe Charlène, if you want to add something afterwards, please, you're welcome. And so there was this work, very interesting, that was been carried out because of various aspects, the diversity of the actors who've participated. It really went from startups to companies, management companies, public transport companies, operators, the various relevant ministries, environment, mobility. So it's very participative. Everyone was able to provide his contribution in the definition of this roadmap. We already have an online version where you can actually see. We're going to put the link to it to the chat. It's on our website, but we will also soon have the finalized version of this roadmap. So it was interesting because of the diversity of the people involved and also the geographic diversity. From the beginning, we said it cannot just be people around Abidjan. And so there were workshops in other cities in the Ivory Coast. There were Odiene, Diawadié, that were associated closely with the elaboration of this Ivory Coast strategy. In the coming months, we are probably going to be delivering officially a report to the Ivory Coast government. All this has very concrete feedback, as you can see on the program. Aristide, his title is program director of Amuga. Now he is the manager of Amuga. Amuga is the agency for urban mobility for the wider conurbation of Abidjan. And so there's, of course, there is back and forth between the various stakeholders and experiences. And we hope that Aristide is going to be able to capitalize on this work that we have done together in his new functions as head manager of Amuga, as an institution that was created recently in order to manage the transports in the wider Abidjan region on the model of the CETUD, which is the Senegal version of this institution. We're actually going to hear from Khalim Cissé, who is the studies manager from CETUD, who somewhat like what Aristide is doing. So the idea is really to distribute these best practices, to put people on the table and to create an environment where all these institutions can collaborate, and we basically accompany them on climate strategies. And it's really they who have the keys to develop the activities, and we accompany them in their initiatives. I don't know if I've been very clear, but maybe Charlène, you could add something to this. Charlène Kwasi, if you could speak about your experience, because Charlène, from the beginning, has been part of the people and the organizations that were part of the process from the beginning. I just wanted to go back before I give the microphone to Charlène. I just wanted to remind her that the PPMC was born in the COP21 in Paris. So today it's been kind of slowed down in its initiative, but it's been widely taken over by SOCAD, by Ondimon, that already exists, where people like Charlène and Maroxa are working. And it was a good springboard and a good example of a community that came around with, and of course, transports are today among the most active communities to implement the results that we had negotiated from civil society, to really mobilize the non-state actors. It's not common everywhere, but we can see this in the transport industry, how things are moving together with the national authorities. So I just wanted to bring this back because it's really interesting to see how we have managed to move forward on this topic. As Romain asked, Charlène, maybe you can add something and then we'll move on.
You summed it up. Romain summed it up very good. It was a singular experience. We were able to work with public and private stakeholders at the same table. And we were able to see that there was awareness in other cities in the interior of the country who were aware of these questions. We know that Ivory Coast is really geared towards Ivory Coast, or towards Abidjan. Abidjan is really the center of activity and of concentration. So it was very interesting to see how different stakeholders from different areas were able to work together. And we saw that working with various people within an ecosystem is much more gratifying. And it's more embedded in the actual truth of this situation, because we're able to see that there are transport realities that in Boaké that are different from those in Abidjan. So it was extremely interesting and a very rich experience. The involvement of the Transport Ministry shows us that it's a very interesting topic. The environment, the Ministry of Environment was also involved. We have to keep in mind that this ministry, for the strategical point of view in Ivory Coast, we can see that their roadmap includes what we were proposing and suggestions. So it's influencing and impacting the policies and strategies of sustainable mobility. We can also see that the Environment Ministry takes into account some of the points that we have brought forward. We also see that the national government is very interested in including this topic in their policies and strategies. So thank you very much. One thing, I'm watching the chat. We haven't received many questions, so please ask what you'd like to ask, and send in as many questions as you've got. We also would like to get proposals. I know it's very difficult to raise your hand virtually because we're quite numerous here, but please do send in your questions and send in whatever you'd like, questions, comments. So I'd like to give the floor to the AFD representative. He's working. So we know that a lot of things are being done in Abidjan and in Cairo also. We're moving forward in many areas. So we're going to look at the exchange points, the multi-modular exchange points. This is something that they're looking at in Abidjan, and Lise Breu is going to present this. Good morning. So thank you for having invited me. I'm going to try to answer the questions. I won't be able to answer all of them because I am replacing Valentine Meunier, who is the project manager, who cannot be here. So I'd like to come back to what Romain and Charlène have spoken about, the Côte d'Ivoire or the Ivory Coast roadmap. So I'd like to really look at it from an operational point of view. So not only we're going to look from the roadmap to the action and the impacts. So we have one step which is very important for the
Voilà. Merci beaucoup. On a des Anglais qui nous écoutent. Merci.
Sorry.
Let's go.
Donc dans cette phase de mise en œuvre.
So we're really putting it in place now. There's an important stage, which is project preparation. It's a stage where we look at feasibility, its relevance for economic point of view, and also from the economic point of view. So let's look at the modular exchange points in Abidjan. In the AFD organization, we try to put together tools that we can accompany our partners in various projects around the world, and that's how SCCA came to light, which is something that facilitates projects, not only from an environmental point of view, from the attenuation and also the adaptation point of view. It's co-financed by the European Union and also by the Swiss Cooperation Organization. And it's being used in dozens of countries in Africa. We also have a partnership with Mobility City. It's co-financed by the European Union, other funders such as German financing institutions, and we try to accompany the various cities in urban planning. So let's look at a project that was financed by SCCA for the Abidjan Sustainable Mobility. Let's keep in mind that Abidjan is a city of 5 million people, a very quickly developing city, which is very congested. The richest move around in cars, whereas the poorest move around with local public transport solutions when there are buses that are not very comfortable. it is possible to need a few hours or 1 hour to go a few kilometers. So these are very big projects concerning public transport between Abidjan, the Abidjan Metro and BRD. But we have to keep things balanced. I think Aristide or Charlene have already spoken about this. So we have to make a public transport system work in a balanced way. We have to keep in, bring in all of the stakeholders, and we have to keep in mind these the multi-modular exchange points. So what are they? It could be a bus stop, a formal or not, a bus station, sorry, or a bus stop, also formal or not. So there's a large potential to make the system more efficient, more green, and more inclusive. So we work with the MUGA organization, the organization that is really moving forward with this project. So MUGA is trying to put together multi-modular exchange points at these transit points, and to make the transit easy and very safe, and also to reduce congestion on the streets. It's very important for route safety, for feasibility, and also for the fact that it's the general attractivity of public transport in the city, so it can be a key for economic development. It can include and involve also small informal business. So we work with MUGA, who is really putting together this multi-modular exchange point project. So we're coordinating with them, and we're coordinating the operational point of view for future projects. It's financed by SCCA. And so we're going over and above the feasibility analyses. We want to measure the climate impact of these exchange points. It's quite difficult to do so, and despite the fact that this is the Climate Chance Summit. But what we need are the enablers. It's not really a mode of public transport, so it's difficult to measure what is the climate impact. So we've got to move forward with the operational side of the roadmap, but we also have to bring in a methodology point of view to see what is the climate impact and how to reduce it. So I'd like to come back to what Charlene said. It's true that today we're talking a lot about Abidjan. We're also financing a project in the city of Bouaké to try to put together an investment plan, a realistic one, which is in the second city of Ivory Coast. So I've shown you what we can do to move from the vision per project to actual action. Thank you very much. So we've got one more speaker, but I think Mr. Midi can't stay very long. So can you hear me? Are you still here, Mr. Midi?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes, I'm still here.
I've just got one question for you concerning how do you see informal transport in your projects in Cairo or in other cities? How do you see informal transport in your transport questions?
Yes, we see them as an integral part of the public transport network in Cairo and in other African cities. So they respond rapidly to demand, they respond to the passenger needs quicker and more efficiently than other players. As we see in Cairo, for example, they comprise more than 50% of the public transport network as measured by us. So we see a lot of potential in investing in the decarbonization of this sector in particular, such as the electrification of vehicles and, of course, the data gathering and data management of the routes and the route licensing and regulation of this sector. So yes, they contribute to a lot of the traffic going on at the moment, and they're not really going anywhere. even with the increase in the big mass transit projects currently going on in Africa, they're still going to have a key role in these cities.
Merci. Je le dis à tous les autres intervenants, si on y reviendra dans le débat, parce que je pense que il faut vraiment qu'on insiste, et c'était un des points que nous voulions aborder à Dakar, sur la place du transport informel, sur la
And we really have to think about a very important point, which is the virtual data and the use of virtual tools. With all the challenges that this does pose, especially for these stakeholders that are major stakeholders in the transport solution, but they have to be included, not only in France, but in other countries. It's a very efficient mode of transport. So what we're trying to reintroduce here in developed countries through car sharing programs, which is a type of informal mode of transport. Especially, we keep in mind that, for example, in car sharing programs, the cost of the actual trip is shared. So, and it's very efficient, very, very efficient. And sometimes it's a competitor with classical modes of public transport. So we have to keep in mind, not only in Africa, but also in many other countries, the role of the informal transport sector. As you said, this is 50% of the market, and there is a large growth in it. So we have to learn from it. So, for example, rapid transit buses was not invented in Europe; it was invented in South America, and we're now copying at this. So, thank you very much for your discussion. For this discussion, maybe we'll be able to meet up in person in Cairo, but we'll see if the circumstances will permit this. So, thank you very much. We have another speaker, Mr. Kadim Cissé. And he's going to talk to us about the roadmap in Senegal. And he will now take the floor, which will be the last speaker. And we'll be able to, afterwards to have a Q&A period. Thank you very much. Thank you to Climate Chance. I thank everyone for allowing me to participate in this conversation. My name is Kadim Cissé. I'm the Director of Strategies at CETUD in Senegal. And if you have any questions at the end, of course, I can answer them. So concerning the roadmap, we have been working on it with Climate Chance. And we worked on it at a first workshop in April of last year. So let's look at what CETUD is doing. It's the organizational institution here in Dakar. We work in the greater Dakar area. The law that founded our organization also allows us to work in other cities outside of Dakar. Transport is a centralized government jurisdiction. It hasn't been transferred to the local authorities, despite the decentralization law of 2013. There is one exception to this lack of decentralization, which was the transfer to the Dakar local authority concerning public transport and mobility. So we have to keep in mind that the users and also the NGOs are also included in the mobility issues through associations and organizations in Dakar. We are trying to put together a network of public transport. So the roadmap is very important. we started to think about what we were going to do. And we started to think about it about 3 years ago with SSADP. And we were thinking about what was happening in various African countries, including Senegal. So, and this led us to put together this roadmap. So we wanted to put together a national planification base to move forward with sustainable mobility. This roadmap will be part of the collective strategy that has already been put together by the government. In 2020, we had a new orientation law here in Senegal, which gave us the best strategy base for national policies in mobility, which took into account this roadmap. It also allowed us to plan what is a sustainable mobility here in Senegal. So we work under the Infrastructure and Decongestion Ministry. We know that the CETUD, our organization, does not have actual governmental jurisdiction, considering the fact that we work under the ministry. So as I said, we work under the Ministry of Transport and Decongestion. We work with the roads department and also with the transportation department. And we work with the various agencies that are all involved in road strategies and policies. And we also work together with the Sustainable Development and Environment Ministry. Following the COP21, we put together a CDL document, which concerns in a very precise manner transport and transportation. With the Environment Ministry, we put together an analysis, a vulnerability analysis, taking into account climate change. So we were part and parcel of this analysis, and other stakeholders will be involved. For example, the Ministry of Economy, the Local Authority Ministry, and also the local authorities are included in this, and also the National Territory Management Agency and other ministries are included in this project. Also, civil society and the private sector are involved in this project. So what are our goals? Let's have a global shared vision concerning mobility and transport in the country. So we also have to define what mobility is for the second-tier cities.
A very important development of car use and a very limited urban space, so a strong land use pressure. So lots of challenges and difficulties which we have to face today. And of course, we will have to anticipate in the secondary cities that are starting to develop themselves. For instance, on the coast, on the southern coast of Senegal, of Dakar. This is a touristic area that is growing very quickly, very dynamic, and we are preparing a urban mobility plan for this new city that is springing up. And we're planning to do the same thing also for Saint Louis and Case, which are major cities. We also, through this roadmap, want to clarify the rules and the roles between the different actors. because for the moment transport is still being managed by the state. It's not a territorial competence. So this is also something that needs to be managed on a day-to-day. It needs to be managed as close as possible to the users, even though this is clearly not institutionalized and handed over to the local authorities, and a regional government is still nevertheless have a role to play, particularly, for instance, for land use, for authorizations they're giving. And all this has an impact on the mobility. This is something that we're seeing every day here in Dakar. It generates lots of conflicts, which we're trying to and also trying to integrate that in the legislation and the planification in order to better manage all these situations. So this is what I wanted to say regarding the roadmap. Here again, we need to planify the partnership together with, we're working together with climate change, and we hope very soon to be able to move forward on this. We already elaborated the terms of reference, which we have passed on to the partners, because from the beginning, from the first workshop on, we had implemented a technical committee by together with all the shareholders. We want to do this as a participative system and have a vision that will be shared by everyone. Thank you. If there is any questions, I will answer them during the Q&A session. Thank you very much. I'm very happy, Khadim Sissé, to see that things are moving forward, because we are wishing, we're not the only ones, I'm sure the others so in order really to learn from you, in order to be much more efficient, and we'll be very happy to meet you again next year, and maybe even before that, because we will have to prepare the summit in Dakar next year, and to work together with Romain and everyone on these issues. So we now have times for questions from the audience, and I would like to ask 2 or 3 questions, which I will be relaying. Many questions related to informal transport networks, particularly as we've seen in the chat. How can we ensure that we can decarbonize the informal transport sector? So I'm going to ask this question first to our friends from Mopay Solutions, because you have given very ambitious objectives, electrical cars. This is very ambitious. How do you see the possibility of and considering the difficult, when we already see how difficult it is to implement electric mobility in a country like France, it must be even more complicated in Congo. So if you have, could you maybe tell us what are the means necessary to decarbonize the informal transport sector, if you could? And I also wanted to add a second question to that. What is your business model? Because I suppose that all this costs a lot of money, and I don't think it's strictly functional or not. Thank you for the questions. For the economic model, of course, it costs a lot of money, yes. And particularly in Congo, which is a priority area in terms of sustainable development. And as you know, the environment plays a role important, because we have with the equatorial, we have a giant equatorial cover, forest cover within our borders. So for the moment, we finance ourselves via partners, which I have mentioned, Arrow Bank, the first major bank of Congo, and the major telecom operator that are working with us. We have not we hope that we'll be able to get funding from the States. At the moment, our business model is very simple. We basically make money from our car sharing system that allows us to bring in revenue. This is our business model for the moment. Just a small remark is today we have more and more of our customers that come and load their electrical cars. About 15 customers, and most of the cars are hybrid rechargeable cars that come and use our charging station, a network of charging stations. We have most of the electric cars are Teslas for the private cars, and that's only for the elite because they're very expensive. Regarding the decarbonization of the informal sector, we have tried to work, we use AID here in Congo in order to get funds from the USAID in order to get a loan or in order to get a credit in order to be able to provide credit facilities to taxi driver. So we basically so they basically pay back their credit line and they replace their carbon-based taxi with a clean energy car. This is one of the models that we've proposed that we're finalizing at the moment together with the USAID and the banks. This is one of our development angles. I think, since honestly, that in Africa, in Congo, we produce enough electricity. We have a huge potential in hydroelectricity, but we do not have the network to think. But we haven't got the power lines, and actually, we're working together with Rwanda to develop that network. And the financing have been voted, and even the works have started. The problem always is the infrastructure. Is to distribute the electricity. So our charging station, when they are in isolated sites, they are using solar energy. So we're going via solar energy to recharge our cars. These are the solutions that we have tried to implement. So our charging stations are, especially when they're in isolated sites, they're autonomous. In Kinshasa, we haven't got that many power cuts compared to the outside of the city. So for the sites outside of the city, we are charging the batteries of the charging stations with solar energy. So we also want to set up a credit line via a partner bank, and so we should have at least 100 taxis on the first year that will convert to electrical cars. Okay. I would like to just say something that I noted recently in Africa in a conversation with one of the deciders who said, it's dramatic what you're doing in Europe because you are you're reforming all the old polluting cars and then you put them on the used car market, and all these cars then flooding the African market. We're going to have millions of cars that are energy was very underperforming and they're being dumped on our market. And I was thinking maybe we were saying by going to electric vehicles, we basically jump one stage where we decide to have from the beginning cars that are much more energy efficient and much less greenhouse gas emission, because of course the emission norms in Africa are very high. Sometimes there's not even any standards in terms of emission. So maybe we need to go via a strong reductions of greenhouse gas emissions from traditional cars. Maybe it's an utopia. I have a comment to make on this. I've heard this before. If we look at the major car manufacturers, all the car manufacturers said up till 2025, 2030, they will switch to electric or hydrogen drives. So if we do this in Congo particularly, we have a law for new cars under 5 years. That means that in 15 years, maximum 10 years, all cars, new cars that will be bought in Congo, that will enter Congo, will have to be electrical. So if we don't adapt now, we'll have a problem, or we'll have a law saying we need to have recent cars of less than 5 cars, people that have no infrastructure for loading electric cars, then we'll have to import electric cars. So we in Congo, we import 90% of what we consume. So we were going to have a supply problem. We are aware of this ecological transition that is going on. I think our public authorities need to adjust to that. In Congo, we're 63.9 of fine particles in the air pollution, and it's not by driving with diesel cars that are the solution that we'll be able to achieve results. So I think that first, and this is what I recommended with the authorities, is that they be the examples, that they show the road. The biggest carpool in Kinshasa, it's the president of the presidency. If the presidential carpool goes electric, then that will also have an impact, and we can see this because in Cairo, this is the case. In Cairo is the first partner of Congo. Maruksa asked for the microphone. No, thank you, Bernard. I see that there's lots of questions. This issue of second-hand cars with substandard cars that are being dumped on the African market, some of them that are banned in other areas. There is a recent report of the United Nations Development Environmental Program that shows how we are dumping in African countries not roadworthy cars that are completely substandard and not allowed on the streets anymore in Europe. They maybe with a new wave of electrical cars that would be standard cars and that would be on standard. I think there is a really consideration very important that we've heard from other speakers about the access to credit, the access to fiscal means.
C'est un risque toujours de ma part. Toutes mes
The other speakers have said the access to financings. This doesn't work for the operators of informal transport, of people of small taxi fleets. We will not be able to have a penetration of the electrical vehicle in Africa if we don't give the access to financing. So for the reality of if we remember, there is a dependency on informal transport. 80% of the people living in cities in Africa depend for their mobility on informal mobility. It's not just electrification of cars, of private cars. I think we need to be careful when we also to the motorization levels that we're seeing in Africa. It's still very weak compared to other areas, but it's growing constantly. It's not just electric cars. It's not private electric cars. We also need to think about public transport, two-wheelers, bicycles, tricycles, tuk-tuks. For instance, in the informal economy, to go to various markets on secondary cities. This union on the... I think the conversation is really very wide and goes via this combination of what it's going to be exported or imported from other areas, the substandard models, the access to the financing to renew the fleets, and really a global vision that would only focus on private cars. No, we need to also look at the different types of vehicles and modes of transport that are necessary in a sustainable and decarbonized mobility for the African cities. So thank you for the opportunity to mentioning that. Yes, and the question I wanted to ask, I have three of one. The first one is for a friend from Senegal, from Kalim Cissé, and you and many others. We see that in our countries, these are questions that are raised. How can we do a promotion of sustainable public transport if there is no regulation and control authorities? How do you see the link between the regulation of the flows and the regulations and the development of public transport? Because this is extremely valid in the context of your countries. How do you see the answer to this question? Thank you. Yes, it's an interesting question and a difficult question because indeed the challenges that we have today in Dakar with the urban pressure, the population growth and the increase for demand of mobility, that means we need to develop public transport networks, but also more mass transport systems. That's why we're working about light rail solutions. The aim is to really to develop a network. But if we do all this in order to have a modal node and have less cars on the roads, because there's lots of traffic jams, particularly in Dakar. That's the reality of today. If we don't look at it in detail, say there's a contradiction here because there's many investments done in infrastructure, etc., in road building, etc., in bridges. But in reality, they are, of course, more facilitating and more favorable to individual cars than to public transport. But there's a reason for that. There was a deficit of infrastructure that we had to catch up. But as long as we haven't got implemented a performing public transport system, we will not be very credible to block people from using their car. So that's why we're working in the first stage to make the networks more performing, and in parallel developing light rail networks and mass transit solutions. We're working on this with the French Development Agency, which I would like to thank at this level because they're an important partner for the restructuration of the bus network to make it more performing, also to increase the rotation frequency. So it's a big part of the work will be on infrastructures and the bus lines by planning, for instance, more bus lanes or priority accesses. So in the first level, we're working on this public transport networks that will allow us to limit and to be able to, was mentioned earlier, the infrastructures will not be able to set up light rail everywhere, for instance. Don't you think it's really the chicken and the egg? You don't think that we need to restrict the car use in parallel as a development infrastructure? You're convinced that you need to rely on demand and offer? Yes, this is what we're doing already. If we do things like light rail in a very dense environment, urban environment like us today, with bus lanes, that also reduces the capacity that used to be used, the access by cars. So we basically give the priority to the public transport. In the future, it would be fairly particularly difficult for individual cars to circulate in the city, but the priority will be public transport. That is something I was when speaking about the restrictions of bus lines by implementing bus lanes and priority bus lanes. We give the priorities to cars compared to the individual cars. There's another lever on which we can work, and we're discussing it at the moment. It's the parking in the city. And at one moment, we're going to have to work on that, on the parking issues. But this is a topic that is shared with different actors, territorial governments. But paradoxically, we have not got the competence, the mandate for transport. That is a state mandate. But nevertheless, we are the ones we are the ones who can decide on the use, on the land use, and on the road use. It's not an easy solution, but nevertheless, we want to work on it, even though we haven't got the mandate, in order to act as much as possible on these levels in parallel. But it's useless to, if we want to ban cars without offering an alternative, it's going to be very complicated. Thank you very much.
Very much. Another question for Charlene. Following up to what you said, could you give us 2 or 3 best practices, some examples to really show us in concrete terms, over and above what you've already spoken about, something that's happening in West Africa, for example, and something that we haven't looked at a lot today?
Quel plan? Des bonnes pratiques sur quel plan?
What are you talking about? Best practices in which area? So decarboning, informal transport, decreasing private car use, or any type city questions, urban questions about mobility. Yes, so let's start concerning the informal sector. I think we're really not acknowledging enough this sector when we look at it from an investment point of view. Nowadays, all of the strategies, or most of the strategies, are concentrated on public transport, formal public transport in Abidjan. We're looking at the public demand and supply. We've always looking at similar projects in Dar es Salaam, Addis Ababa. So they're concentrating on transport infrastructures which are very large and which take a long time, the formal ones. So, but if we look at it as it from the day-to-day needs and challenges of the users, I don't think they're really acknowledged enough, and really they're not taken into account enough in this strategy making process. So there are some encouraging projects, the Quick Queens, and these exchange points that Lise Breuil spoke about to fluidify traffic, to decrease traffic, and to increase access for the users. These are best practices which will have effects in the mid-long-term range. That's what I think, at least. But currently, best practices which will change realities for those who are really there on the ground. For example, the drivers, the chauffeurs. It would be to give them insurance, access to insurance schemes, and to access to health systems. So these are best practices that are not enough and that are done at an individual level. There's not a general national strategy for this type of integration of the actual day-to-day users. There are some local initiatives that are being done. Some startups are working on this nowadays, especially concerning the mobile payment schemes. And trying to integrate these local day-to-day actors in local initiatives, but they're not included in the national strategy making. Unfortunately, they will talk about this at the end of this workshop, but there are many other points that we need to talk about. For example, what type of gas and petrol are they actually using? So why do we have to move abruptly towards electric vehicles when we know that nowadays electric EVs have a lot of challenges that they're faced with? For example, there's a lack of the basic resources to put together these EVs. the European car makers are starting to feel the lack of basic materials to make the EVs. So why don't we try to modify the type of petrol that's used in these cars? For example, use better refined petrol so that there will be less greenhouse gas emissions. So we have to really go to the base. Look at the basics and think about what is the carbon footprint in the cities. We have to look at the quality of the cars and the quality of the petrol. Thank you very much. One question was asked previously. Why are there only technicians here speaking today and no elected representatives? So this is one of our objectives, to put together these roadmaps that are then showed to the elected representatives. And this is our way, our tool to convince the elected representatives. So we can show them that we're working together in a club of stakeholders in mobility in Africa. But if we can include elected officials, it would be better. But this is one of the reasons that we put together these roadmaps, to really bring them and show this to the politicians. So I'm the president of the Scientific Council for French transport, and I was one of the decision makers for public transport in my region for 30 years. So I saw that it was really easy to strategize in the long term, but we couldn't put together a strategy for the very short term. So I tried to convince my friends that sometimes I did actually fail in my role, because I was not able to encourage on a day-to-day basis, the users to take the public transport, for example, when they go to work in the morning. And so these people then chose, because I wasn't able to convince them, to take their own car to go to work, rather than taking public transport, which is actually a very viable solution. So let's keep in mind that we cannot always put together solutions that are not very efficient and performant. But in Europe, we see that there's something new on the ground, which is electric bikes. EVs is something that's absolutely super. You take your bike, you get on your electric bike, and you go to your place of work, no problem. So we have to integrate this into public transport. We saw that people would before go to the bus station by foot and then go from the station to their workplace by foot. And this is not the case now, especially with foldable e-bikes. And we have a country, there's the country Vietnam that we've been working with a lot. We worked on a tram project. And I have always said that if we hadn't brought in, for example, the motorcycles users in Saigon, the tram would have been empty. So we had to keep this in mind when we were planning the tram. We had to keep in mind the motorcycle users and the actual role of motorcycle in Saigon. So the only thing that I can say to you now as a concluding argument is that I hope we can meet up next year at a meeting. For others, maybe earlier at other events in other places around the world. I thank you for having participated. I hope it's been a useful session. And if you need to speak, if you wish to speak with me, please do not hesitate. I thank all of the team. I think we can see Romain here, but there are many other people who have helped us put this together. And these people will allow us to move forward on our projects. And to all of those in Europe, maybe we'll see each other in another in a transport context. If not, then have a good day and thank you for participating.
Bye bye. Ouais, tu mets fin. Hop.